No, we do appreciate you guys letting us go out and serve the county, so.
Well, all I say is you do a great job for the county. I don't know if we we're due for any appreciation, but the volunteers are. Good. Sheriff's Deputy Visa card.
I need approval, official approval with the motion that we open a credit card for our new sheriff's deputy and then the credit limit. And I believe that each of them right now is at $1,000 limit. So if we can just have a motion that states that James Wenning is able to get a Visa card for $1,000.
They have their own names on it, correct?
Yes, they each have their own cards, and it's used to refuel their vehicles, or if they, have other expenses incurred within their job.
I'll move that we get a card with, when we get the bills, I want it itemized.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion, second by Blake. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, we will get a card.
Thanks.
Safe assessment revisit.
That's just, we went over it last month. You guys said you wanted the month to kind of look at it and review it, and if there were any of the changes that we wanted to make, you wanted about a month to kind of consider it, but if you haven't had enough time, we can always revisit it next year.
I think that this is also maybe an issue that we can bring up with the visiting people from the Association of Counties,
Sure.
because they would possibly have information for us on that.
Yeah.
So if we kind of make a list of things that we may want to talk about with them,
Sure.
because
Yep.
they want input from us.
We can certainly do that.
Okay.
Who made this list, if I may ask?
The list was made by Ryan Wentz. He works for CISA. He and Daniel Kruger, who work for the state, security, I can't remember the department's name. They make this list. They came in and did the assessment in May. And when they did their assessment, they compiled everything and then they sent it in this format to me.
Well, the reason I asked, I see some things up here that are fire hazards that they didn't even touch on.
Okay.
But I'll bring that up.
Sure.
Okay, last one, we have pole site accessibility assessment, if I can read that all right.
Yeah, they're just, they do it every election year. They're coming out to assess Oliver County Courthouse full site. I don't know when they're doing it. They'll show up between July 15th and middle of August probably. They're just gonna show up and tell us if we are accessible or not.
If you try, the joint meeting with the city or law enforcement, we've set the tentative date for August 5th, which is your next city commission meeting,
Okay,
for 1 hour prior to the meeting,
so it's 6 o'clock?
6 o'clock,
Okay,
August 5th. So that works for the city.
okay, I'll take that back to, and respond, and give you a return answer on that, Lee. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Okay, building permit for Robert Clark. more than one?
No, we just have that one. That's the sheet.
Oh, okay. The building permit was approved by the, or recommendation to approve. He just wants to set a mobile home on his property for his son. And he'll get the sewer, everything figured out with the state, but present use right now is, the current zoning is residential, because I have 2 houses on there, so I am able to, there is enough room where I don't have to pull from any more acres. So I can put three mobile homes on there.
Two houses and one mobile home, sorry.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's 2 acres, and when I looked at it and how big the mobile home is, it's fine. I don't have to pull from any more acres, so we can all put it all on that 2 acre spot.
You have to, this county, is there anything that says it has to be rock, or can it be, does it have to be foundation type?
No, he, Robert and I already talked, he's not gonna make it permanent for right now in case he wants to
Right.
move out. So yes, he can put it on piers and then we'll tax him
Just mobile.
just mobile home. Yep. So, and him and I already discussed that, so. So he'll have 2 houses and then, like I said, that mobile home on there. And then he's going to get everything figured out with the sewer and whatnot, so we don't have to worry about that.
That'll all be in before the.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Building permit has been approved by the planning and zoning.
Yes.
Okay,
I'll move the,
get a motion by Darrell.
Second.
Second by Blake. Any further discussion on this one? Discussion, hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Approved.
Just at the bottom. I didn't highlight it for you.
See what you're trying to mess me up again.
I was gonna say, where's my highlighter? Gotta use Daryl's when I'm here. Piggybacking. Thank you. Next we have the CO2 ordinance. It was approved and read at our meeting last Thursday.
I also have some letters from residents here.
May I speak on this, please, Lee?
Yes, you can speak on this, and I need to find out how many here want to speak on this.
Well, it's not.
Okay, I'll go, okay,
Thank you.
okay. go
This
on.
issue, well, first of all, I have some questions. I was not at the planning and
This is
zoning.
our state attorney.
I was not at the planning and zoning meeting last Thursday, so there are 7 members on the planning and zoning. How many were present?
There were 5.
There were 5, okay, so that constituted a quorum at the beginning of the meeting. Now, my understanding is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that there were a number of abstentions. Is that
There
correct?
were 2 members that abstained,
Okay,
and 1 member was voted to not be allowed to vote.
okay. So, quorum is defined as at least half of the voting members. There was a quorum that existed at the beginning of the meeting. There was not a quorum that existed at the time of the vote. 2 voting members is an insufficient number to pass There needed to be at least 3. So this issue is not ripe for consideration as a matter of law at this time and needs to be sent back to the Planning and Zoning Board until such a time as there's a quorum that can vote on this. There are other issues that should be discussed about the Planning and Zoning Board. However, we cannot take up this issue today because it was not properly passed.
So you're suggesting then that planning and zoning has to call a meeting
Unfortunately,
and present?
that's correct. Unfortunately, because there was a lack of a quorum present at the time that the vote was taken, is not a vote that can be considered. Now, whether the commission at this point wants to take public comment, I take no position on that. It's going to happen eventually anyways, but we cannot take this matter up and vote on it today.
I thought you only needed a quorum to start the meeting.
Not correct.
Okay, so at this time, I need a motion on part of the commission to table this until the official results of the planning and zoning meeting are brought to us.
I'll move that we table it.
I'll second it. And I would also note, I base that opinion that that's an insufficient quorum on Attorney General's opinions, as well as my review of case law.
So basically, they all have to be here, and
There needs to be more than 50% of the voting members.
the 3 of them can't vote, or aren't gonna vote, correct?
Well, if they abstain or recuse themselves, how would
Well,
we handle that?
if they abstain, there is a second question about whether they're shirking their duties.
Well, it's
No. They need to abstain for a legitimate purpose. And there's case law that discusses abstention versus a duty to act. And I'm not prepared to discuss this right now because I don't have all the facts. But I can state with certainty that this matter is not properly before the commission for voting purposes.
Any further discussion from the commissioners on this?
With respect to the Planning and Zoning Board, if I may, there is a great amount of dissent and combativeness with the Planning and Zoning Board. There are a number of assertions going back and forth about people who have conflicts, who don't, not disclosing conflicts. The Planning and Zoning Board is an appointed board by the commission. It may be wise to consider whether the present Planning and Zoning Committee is the appropriate one to handle business. I say that because I have concerns about liability for the county. And that's my piece on that.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of postponing action on the planning and zoning ordinance? Let's have a roll call vote.
Well, there needs to be a motion to send it back to planning
Motion
and zoning.
back to the planning and zoning, okay, we're it that way.
I'll move send it back.
I'll second
Okay,
it.
with that. Okay. I have a motion and a second. Okay, in favor, Blake?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Okay, the next action then will be taken up again by the planning and zoning, and if there's comments from the group here, if there is there anybody that wants to make a comment? And I'll probably limit it, I mean, I don't want somebody to talk all day and just limit it to a couple minutes if there's quite a few of you. If there is none, we'll move on. No comments?
If I may. I'm Robert Borland in Southeast Oliver County. I was present at the meeting when they talked about the conflict of interests. And they really basically went into an executive session and discussed amongst themselves whether there was conflict of interest or not. Bill Bremeyer, he is a landowner, he is the end use. Injection wells, I believe, is supposed to be on his property. Jody Ranke, her husband, owns land where the pipeline is apparently going through. Bonnie Hankey is a landowner. He's probably in the dispersion plume. I'm not sure exactly how the plume's going to go. I guess nobody really knows. J.R. Kinsvold at the time was a member. Worked at Center Machine Shop. Figured he would be getting business down that way. So possible conflict of interest. Corey Hintz, of course. Pipeline going through in the area. Definitely conflict of interest. They come back, they voted and decided that there was no conflict of interest, which I think the people that were here, everybody raised their eyebrows. They're kind of in a thankless job. They're caught between, in a small community, everybody knows everybody. They're either a neighbor, a friend, or a relative. You can't hardly throw a rock up here and everybody's related. So they're in a definite thing. The last meeting I was at last Thursday, they did discuss, and Lonnie recused himself. Bill Bremeyer recused himself. Corey recused himself. JR, of course, resigned. Jody Ranke was not present. So basically, we were down to Randy and Linda Nelson, who was on the phone. My personal thing is I'm not quite sure why they decided to vote on whether they had conflicts of interest or not. To me, it was obvious. They were advised that they could vote on whether they were not. I assume through you.
Well, let me just make sure that we're talking about the same thing here. So there is a statute under the North Dakota Century Code that for governmental bodies and quasi-governmental bodies are required to disclose any potential or actual conflicts of interest. Once that's disclosed, then the statute requires a vote to be taken on whether the individual with an actual or perceived conflict can discuss the matter and whether they can vote on the matter.
Correct.
If the and I believe that a planning and zoning committee is a quasi-governmental board. It serves primarily as an advisory committee, but also serves a very important role of fielding requests for things such as ordinances, requests for things such as exceptions, other uses, those sorts of things. Okay, so it's a requirement under the statute based upon my reading of that Attorney General's opinions and asserted case law that they are required in any time that there is going to be a discussion or a vote on anything that may have actual conflicts or potential conflicts need to be done. So that's why that procedure is being done, and that is being done properly.
Okay.
So that's why. Now, certainly people are free to disagree about whether it is appropriate or inappropriate for the board or the committee to make a determination as to whether they should or should not vote or should or should not be a part of that discussion. However, that's what the statute requires.
Understand. And they did discuss that, and they did a vote the last time, saying that yes, they can discuss it, but they were going to recuse themselves from the actual vote on the thing, which I agree with. And I did get a couple of phone calls of people saying, boy, we should recall planning and zoning members because they should have done this, they should have done that. Well, everybody makes mistakes in life, and I think they rectified their mistake.
Recalling the planning and zoning committee is not an option because it's an appointed.
I understand that, sir, but what I'm getting at is they're in a really tough spot right now because of like I said, they're either neighbors, friends, relatives with everybody else. They're really damned if they do, damned if they don't. I understand it. I don't think that's going to solve anything personally. I'm here to support the Planning and Zoning Board because they are very in a thankless position right now. So I want to express my support for them. I think they're doing a good job. I think they're doing their job as best as they can. I do think, like I said, if they have conflict interest, they should recuse themselves. Now, if it doesn't mean end up with a quorum to where they can vote on matters, then obviously something needs to change. down the road. I know JR resigned, there'll be an open position, I'm not sure if that'll bring you a quorum or not, but I just wanted to express my support for the Planning and Zoning Board because it's a tough decision on them. I know they're getting phone calls, and I haven't seen very much support for the CO2, and so they're balancing that between what the law requires them and what the community wants. So I guess that's all I wanted to say, so thank you.
Is there anybody else, a couple minutes to comment?
I guess if I could
Could you tell me who
comment,
you are and where you're from?
Clint Phelan, I live over by Double Ditch, which is where it's crossing the river. And I had a bunch of information, I don't have to leave it here today, on pipelines and flooding. And I kind of feel like it's somewhat new information for the fact I've been to a lot of meetings that was never discussed. And this is a pretty serious deal, a 2-foot pipeline running over 2,100 PSI. It's affecting a lot of people. And we've been fighting a losing battle because there's a lot of money at stake here. And Summit is going to buy their way through and through politics ram this down our throats. And pipeline ruptures are actually quite common. And I just would hope that the boards look at a lot of information before making a decision. We're all for coal country up here, and we're all for development, but being 5 states dump ground with an admitted no purpose for this after the fact, covering 36 sections or 6 townships, I think it's going to hurt your future development, and it's just kind of a Trojan horse. In the end, it's not going to save any power plants. If the power plant wants to bury on site, that's great, but to drag all this in from 5 states and put people's lives at risk, you probably want to look at all the information at hand, but just wanted to comment on that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone? One more?
Marv Abraham from rural Burley County.
From where?
Rural Burley County.
Okay.
Here's just a letter, and you guys may have seen this in the past because I've been up here a couple, 6 times, but it's about regarding sequestration wells. There's one more here. I have 2 wells on my 40-acre southeast Bismarck, and I'm just concerned about putting this 7,000 or 9,000 feet in the hole. Eventually, it's going to probably get to my water wells out there too, and there's a lot of controversy about this in Iowa and all over about, what's going to happen to the aquifers in the ground. So I'm concerned about that because if it gets in my well, where do I go? We're all the ranchers up there too.
Okay, thank you. Is there one more comment over here?
Yeah, I got one. I'm not going to speak on the CO2 side of things. I've listened to the science from Summit. I've listened to everything else. What I am going to say is I've started to attend a few more of the planning and zoning meetings, watching you guys a little bit closer because it's an election year. I mean, there's 2 seats open on the board. Is everybody acting in the best interest of the citizens of the county? That may be debatable to everybody. Everybody's got a different opinion on that. What concerns me, and I'm no pro, but I did parliamentary procedure back in FFA days. I'm pretty well versed. So I've watched a couple meetings. I've raised points of order on parliamentary procedure issues that have arisen at a couple of these planning and zoning meetings. Number 1, the president cannot vote unless there's a tie. The president was voting at some of these. Just other little things like that seems to be lacking. And I did some research too on the calling of the executive session. Technically that needs to be written, and technically from what I found you need to have an item of business on the floor before that could have even been called for. So how that procedure was done or advised to be done, it's probably a gray area. But it seems there's a lot of infighting It seems there's like a lot of agendas that are trying to be pushed out of that board. And there's a lot of harassment going on right now by one particular board member that is absolutely not acceptable in what I feel should be a professional position for the county to be represented. I guess that's my kind of two pieces on it. I'll answer any questions to me directly. If not, that's my 2 cents.
When you talk about parliamentary, the county has not adopted any sort of Robert's Rules of Order or any sort of other parliamentary, so I'm not real sure what you're referring to. Perhaps the county should.
Well, in the running of a meeting, you know, we were taught certain ways to bring up business, certain motions, certain times. Technically, that should be, meetings should follow some structure. I mean, it's obvious. The president is learning on planning and zoning. He is getting better from what I have been seeing. But there's just some stuff that isn't coming in the right places there or being brought properly, I don't think, into a meeting. So, just my comment.
One more comment, someone makes, then we'll, well,
My name is Stuart Harner, and I live in the southeast corner of the county. I don't have any conflicts with any of this, except when someone has a conflict, they shouldn't be involved. I don't care if it's the planning and zoning, or if it's this commission. They should recuse themselves, or have some kind of temporary replacement, or something. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but obviously anybody that's got a monetary potential should probably not be involved in the decision making. Thank you.
okay, we'll close it. I hear nobody else wants to speak up, so we're,
I'm Randy Schmidt. I guess the question for the county commissioners, does any of you guys have a conflict of interest in the Summit pipeline?
It's not properly before, we're not voting on anything, so there's no reason to disclose anything.
legal opinion, we don't talk about that right now.
Well, it's not,
Okay.
it's not that we don't
It's
talk
still
about it,
not
it's just there's no vote that's pending, there's no statutory requirement to review conflicts of interest. This is, a county commission meeting, not a counseling session.
Anyone else? That's it. We're done with discussion on the CO2 Summit carbon. Do we have anything left on our agenda for today?
No, we didn't.